Welcome to another edition of Up Close. My name is Tsepa Motsekua. Up Close is a daily current affairs show that profiles men and women making waves in their industries and gives newsmakers a human face. The program also gives newsmakers a platform where they can share their stories and vision and even tackle uneasy concerns without scorn or vilification. So stay tuned with us for the next half hour as we talk to charismatic radio presenter Criselda Kananda. Criselda Kananda is a household name in talk radio whose expert advice on health matters is no surprise as she's a former health professional. She's a mother of 3 and owns a consultancy focusing on workplace wellness program. She has sat on boards such as the National AIDS Council and received much recognition such as an award from former First Lady Mrs. Zanele Mbeki for her contribution towards the upliftment of young women in South Africa. And today she joins us in our studio. Criselda, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm sure it feels like work being in this building.
Of course it does.
But today is all about you, and it's your special day as well.
Yeah.
It happens to be your birthday.
I'm so humbled. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So thank you for making a time for us on such a special day. So let's start there. Where were you born?
Goodness, how much time do we have for this?
Plenty.
All right. I was born in Boksburg, Benoni, surprisingly.
Okay.
At the time, it was a whites-only hospital. And my mom, being a young pregnant girl, went to this hospital just wanting to give birth and was chased away for being wrong color. And as she started screaming out of pain, a nurse spotted her, smuggled her into a linen room and assisted to give birth to this baby. And nurse and mom were taken to the closest hospital that was for blacks at the time. And her name was Criselda. And that's how I earned this name, Criselda.
Oh, that's a beautiful story, Criselda.
Thank you.
Okay, and then growing up, I mean, your story, I must say, reads like fiction.
I know. That's why I'm writing a book.
You get that often, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So let's chat about Criselda. You know, most people cannot even talk about their lives till like their teenage years, but yours is very interesting. Tell us about your life at 8 years old and onwards.
There was, when my mom and dad divorced, obviously as children you get confused, where do you belong? As you seek that sense of belonging, I ran away from my dad because he gained custody, ran away to look for mommy and ended up in the streets. At some point in my life, I lived in the street and became streetwise, learned how to hustle. And I always share the story with the hope of encouraging people that as a child comes up to you as you roll up your window, just remember that it may be a Criselda on her way to look for a mummy. You know, sometimes just stopping and giving a smile or just whatever it is that you can give, it always helps.
Criselda, just let's stay there. How old were you?
I'm 7.
Where did you travel to? You know, how did you eat? How did you take care of yourself in the streets? How long was it that you were out in the streets?
It's a period of 2 weeks. Obviously, it becomes, you know, as I grow older, there are visions that are distorted. But I remember that it was 2 weeks. I was 7, walking from a distance from Davidton. I'm walking all the way to Witbank. And in my young mind, I believe it's a walking distance. Because I've seen when my mom comes to fetch us for holidays, we get there. So I can walk there in my young mind. And actually,
so it's not like you did not know your mother. You had a relationship with your mother.
Yes.
You just decided, like,
I'm going to look for mommy. I was
today,
a naughty girl.
Yeah, I'm leaving. I'm going to mommy.
Yeah, I'm going to find mommy, and I believe that with mommy, life will be better. Because, you know, when you're raised by a stepmother, at times when they try to instill love, for you, they're mistreating me. Because every child needs discipline in order for them to stay in line. And for me, that reflected itself as not being kind. So I walked to find mommy, and I got to Witbank. And for me, you know, I reflect on that part of my life simply because that's where I experienced God. Because I look at life today, anything could have happened to me, Tsepang. And I remember as a 7-year-old going into a bush praying for safety. I didn't even understand what safety meant, but I said to God, on that day that I'm walking to my mom and you are going to come with me, right? And I mean, there were parts where I walked through a stream and did not drown, and I'm as black as they come, so I can't swim.
Yeah, I read you use the door of a car.
Yes, to, scrap metal.
Yeah, scrap metal
yes,
as like your boat, because you've seen people do that, so surely you're going to float.
Absolutely. So I floated. Fortunately, I was skinny, so that also helped, and managed to go across the stream. And I mean, I look back now, anything could have happened. Only God, you know, made that possible.
Anything could have happened because you got picked up by a truck driver.
And guess what? My first lift was a truck driver, and he played such a fatherly role. It was not even funny. I get lost. I think I was only left with 10 kilometers to get to Witbank, because I had said to him, I know that my mother goes via Dallas and Ochis, but I don't know what that means. But eventually we get to Witbank. So he got me as far as Ochis. Wow. And that's where I get lost, because I could not remember the address. But somehow, you know, God's mercy, I managed to get to Witbank 2 weeks later.
Did Mommy give you a hiding?
Oh, no. May my mother's soul rest in peace. You know, I think at the time, she was in a bad space herself. That immediately, I mean, what was driving me through that journey was my mother seeing me and hugging me, giving me love and embracing me and saying, welcome home, you know, you've done well. Because I survived in the streets. It was really, really a matter of survival. And I get there to her, it's like, why are you here? And I think what made it worse was when she made it vocal that you shouldn't have been here, you shouldn't have come here.
And you should have stayed with your father.
I think the trauma started from that age, because you can't help but feel like you don't belong. You can't help but feel like you're a burden. I beg your pardon. And in trying to figure out what do we do now, immediately I was taken to my grandparents' house, and that's where I was raised. And I thank God for that moment, that instantly my mother made a decision that I don't have the means to take care of her. Therefore, I'm going to take her to my, at the time, it was her uncle. And that's who I grew up knowing as a fatherly figure. My grandparents taught me everything I know, and it may have been a tragic story as a young girl, but it became such a beautiful story as I get groomed to be this wonderful woman that we're celebrating today.
I think that's wonderful that you recognize that. I absolutely love that. Let's hold that. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we'll continue to get up close with Criselda Kananda. Would greatly appreciate suggestions and comments about the show. My Twitter handle is @Tsepi_Motsekua. Stay with SABC News. Thank you for staying with us as we get up close with the charismatic radio presenter, Criselda Kananda. I absolutely love the way that you're so comfortable talking about yourself, because that's what this program is about. You know, we have to tell people that, listen, we seek to inspire people, you know. So I really appreciate that you're so comfortable. Let's fast forward. You got married very early at age 20.
I was 18.
18.
Yeah.
So this actually...
20, I was already on my way to a second experience in marriage. I was only 18. And
do you think it had anything to do with that feeling that you don't belong? You wanted to hurry up and...
Of course it did.
Create your own family structure.
Security that I felt my parents never provided. Because yes, You can have relatives taking over, trying to play that motherly, fatherly role, but it's never the same. So in my getting married early, in a way, I was seeking security. And at the time, not even realizing that, you know, security you can provide for yourself. It's the wrong reason to actually marry. And a terrible thing then happens, Tepang, where history repeats itself. I was pregnant at 18, at 19, gave away my daughter because I didn't even know what this thing called mothering was about, because I never felt mothered as a young girl. And I had to just consciously break the cycle, break the curse, that today my daughter is 24 years old and she got married at 24 and she doesn't have a baby at 18. And because I've had to go back in time, in our history, my grandmother was very young when she got married. Her mother was very young when she got married. And I realized that it's in the family and parents have a responsibility to break some of these curses for their children's sake. And if we don't pay attention and we don't share these stories with our children, unfortunately, history continues to repeat itself.
And let's look at how you did that for yourself. You decided, I mean, you've married, you've already had one child, that you're going back to school.
Yeah. I actually, part of giving up my child was me saying, I can't live like this. If this is all there is to life, I don't think it's enough. I know that I look back now, it was a selfish decision to make, but a selfish decision for all of us, because we were all better off with me going back to school. I went into nursing, and whilst in nursing, I think I was 24 when I completed, and I was 24 when I remarried, and he was shot and killed. And at the time, I had a 7-month-old baby.
Okay.
Yeah, and once again, I've had to go back and reflect. I mean, this was part of this process that was cooking me to become the Criselda that I am today. Because part of what I learned from that experience, because every experience that happens to us, we're learning. It's a journey, it's transition. We're supposed to be learning stuff in order for it not to happen again. And I realized that at the time, I had made my then husband my everything. I used to use words such as, he's my all. Because at the time, once again, he provided security. And I realized that, you know, until I once again break the cycle of looking for security, affirmation outside self, this will continue happening. And
how did you end up in radio? Sorry to interrupt you. I want to spend time on your career because you've done tremendously well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, I'm glad that we touched a bit on my history because that's what prepared me for what I do now on radio. Because I remember I was a guest, as I am now, and hopefully something will be born out of this. I was invited in one of the breakfast shows. It was KG Mweket's show on KFM at the time. Did the show, and after the show, the producer actually called me to say, have you considered a career in radio? Like, no, no, because I was coming from this nursing background. After nursing, I moved to marketing. I used to sell containers for Transnet. And yeah, some of the things we do. But I'm grateful for that experience. And after the interview, the lines could just not stop flashing.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a power moment of motivation to people who had recently tested HIV positive. And I was on a journey myself to dealing with my own situation at that time. And he just said, consider this. And I thought about it. I wrote a proposal and I was told, good news don't sell. Because as I started listening to radio, I wanted to be that positive voice that brings about hope, that strengthens people, that says it's okay to just acknowledge your pain. It's okay to cry. But as you cry, seek solutions. And interestingly, the radio station said, no, good news don't sell. And I then asked what it is that I needed to do to ensure that the show happens. They said, find a sponsor. And I did. And I found a sponsor and never looked back. I mean, so many years later.
They took your proposal as it was and gave you that program as it was.
And it was Positive Talk. And I remember when I left the radio station, they tried to continue with Positive Talk. It just didn't work.
With somebody else.
It was Criselda's brainchild.
Yes.
I live, breathe, eat, walk, positive talk. And you got to be experiencing positive energy in that manner for you to call yourself a teacher in positiveness. And
let's talk about that. I mean, before we started the program, we had written an intro, like everybody else does, you know, introducing you as an HIV and AIDS activist, and you were like, no, you know, explain that and connecting it to positive talk.
Yeah. The many years ago when I was told, Sepang, that you have 2 years to live, that's when I was diagnosed HIV positive. Doctor said in 2 years you'll be dead. And, you know, I remember consciously deciding that as I seeked information, as I researched, I realized that there was just so much that we miss in the name of diagnosis. Coming from a nursing background, I remember telling people, you must start leading a healthy lifestyle, but I didn't know what that meant. You must use condoms. I didn't even know who I was talking to. That we look at people as these numbers, these statistics, infected species. We don't relate to them as human beings with challenges, daily life challenges. And how do we then make living with a condition a reality in your space? You know, as Metro FM's payoff line says, it's where you're at. I connected with where are you in your life space, you know. I then, as I researched, realized that we have moved away from focusing on human beings. We call it a human immune deficiency virus, but it's more about the viral infection than it is about humans being infected. So I started breaking down the info. And breaking down the info, realized that it's all about well-being, total well-being, because you need a healthy body, a healthy mind, and a healthy soul. And if you limit it only to the viral infection, you miss the point. And from then, I became an activist of wellness. And somehow media decided that she's an AIDS activist. I mean, I've never been even in any associations where I'm a member, you know, where we're proactively activating on something. Because when you are an activist, you are for something. So I'm not for HIV, but I am for wellness. And hence, it doesn't make sense to say AIDS activist.
Okay, Criselda, we're going to take another break, and then when we come back, we will wrap up our conversation with Criselda Kananda. We'd greatly like to find out what you think about our program. Suggestions, comments, at Tsepi Muzigua. Stay with SABC News. No, sorry. No, it's just doing her makeup. And I've got my hands here. Sorry. It looked like I was...
I thought it did so nicely. You know?
I'm sorry. Thank you for staying with us as we wrap up our conversation with charismatic radio presenter Criselda Kananda. Criselda, it's interesting when you talk about wellness, you mentioned three things, that it's physically, it's psychologically, and emotionally.
Yeah.
With everything that you've been through, you don't mention a time where you were counseled, you were prepared for the next phase of your life. So how did you get it together, you know, your physical, spiritual, and psychological being? How did you get to put it together?
You know, when we westernize everything, we miss some of the teachings that we've always had. Counseling in an African context is sitting with an auntie who's just willing to listen and help you find a solution. Counseling is having the best buddy. And that person that you're always able to go to and give them a call or write them a letter or just sit with them, and they're able to converse with you without judging you.
But in all fairness, a lot of people may have that, but they are unable to move on. Like you said, generation after generation of your mothers, you saw that they were not able to break this thing. What is it in you that you think that you got and you said, nah, I'm not going to continue like this?
You know, you and I are colleagues, and I'm hoping that, you know, after this, our relationship gets to the next level, where people close to me know that when I say I'm God's favorite daughter, it's not something that I take very lightly or just a statement. Even my voicemail says God's favorite daughter, simply because when I opened myself up to be teachable, the teachers were everywhere. It's important that you recognize when you're in a phase where you ask questions and you don't have answers. Seek people who will be able to help you with the answers that you need. And, you know, it was not only talking to those individuals who were in my life, but also going for professional counseling. Because when you go through something like testing HIV positive, for instance, you are a married woman, you are a professional, you are nothing that describes you as people we regard as people at risk. What do you do with that kind of information? And I'm so grateful that when I tested HIV positive, I was a Christian for 3 years, and as an understanding and working towards building a solid relationship with God. And I go to a church that teaches how to use the word on your day-to-day life. That, you know, the promises that are made in the Bible, I practice them, and it's so practical. And I look back and I think, I wouldn't have gone through the many things that I had gone through had somebody told me the wonders of just being loved and being in an environment where you loved unconditionally, you never judged, an environment that teaches me, and that is the Bible, an environment that teaches me.
I have to cut in there because we're going to wrap up the show in the next minute or so. You know, you do a lot of motivational talks. You're involved in a lot of things. You've got your own consultancy. So what does Criselda do when she is not at work and when she's not helping other people?
I feed off the word. I read. I read as much as I possibly can and absorb as much as I possibly can from watching Up Close and Personal and other shows. Because the thing is, you need to go out and just absorb in order for you to teach. And you can't teach when you don't know.
And what makes you laugh? What makes you just throw off your, you know, take off your shoes and just have a good
Watching
cackle?
people, listening to kids. Kids say the darndest things and they are hilarious. And also laughing at myself. You know, there are times when I look back and listen to some of the shows I've done and think that was just a way of life. And laugh. I laugh at myself a lot and that helps.
And then how do you relax at home?
I love spas. Yes, my home is a different species altogether because there are books everywhere. So I'll end up picking up a book. So I
So
love
you actually
spas.
you leave the house and go to a spa?
Yes, and it has to be an environment where there's just nature, where I can connect with nature.
It's beautiful.
Walk in my bath suit if possible.
Really?
Yes, really. It's so healing. It's so therapeutic.
Oh, wow. I hope that's the kind of day that you're going to have further today because it's your birthday.
It should have started already.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for making the time to chat to us, Criselda.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
And that's how we wrap up our conversation with the charismatic radio presenter, Criselda Kananda. We would greatly appreciate your suggestions or any comments. My Twitter handle is @Tsepi Motsekua. We'll see you next time on Up Close on DSTV channel 404 SABC News. Goodbye.